Hello there, welcome to session number 2. We're going to be looking at what exactly are drugs and alcohol and how can you tell if perhaps somebody has used them. Now I'm going to be offering you general information about drugs and alcohol, and hopefully that'll help you feel less confused perhaps about exactly what they are and the effects that they have on people, and maybe that might help you feel a bit less anxious about what's happening for you. Now that's going to be very general information, so you're going to need to decide for yourself what of that applies to your own situation and how you may choose to use that in order to respond to the situation that you find yourself in. Now I'd like to start by defining what exactly are drugs and alcohol. And to do that I'm going to come to our first slide. I like this definition from the UN. It's nice and simple. They say that a substance is something that people take to change the way they feel, think or behave. Now let's make a bit more sense of that. By taking something, what they mean is someone may smoke, eat, snort or use intravenously and do so with the intention of changing the way they're feeling, thinking or behaving. Let's give some examples of that. People may take something to feel calmer, to sharpen up how they're thinking, or maybe to change their behaviour by being able to dance all night long. Substances come in many forms, some of which are legal, such as alcohol, tobacco, coffee. Some are illegal, such as heroin, cannabis and ecstasy. Now, I'm not saying that a cup of coffee is like taking heroin. They're very, very different. But note the underlying intention is the same. A cup of coffee to wake us up in the morning, wanting to change how we feel, think and behave. Also someone who's taking heroin, a much more powerful and very different kind of substance. But again, the intention is to change the way they're feeling, thinking or behaving. Substances also includes the misuse of medicines, such as Valium or cocodamol. So not using them for the purpose for which they were prescribed, but using them to change the way they feel, think or behave. It can include household products, such as lighter fuels, solvents and glue. Some substances occur naturally, such as magic mushrooms, and some are man-made, such as LSD or speed. But what I'm not including in this definition is a medicine that's taken for purely medical reasons, that someone may take in order to get well. Although, as I said earlier, someone may misuse a medicine hoping that they might still be able to change the way they feel, think or behave. Therefore, what we can see is that substance use is actually quite normal, perhaps something that you do. Just to give you some examples, a cup of tea to revive yourself, a drink of alcohol in the evening to calm down, to relax, to socialise. But the focus for the rest of this session and for all the subsequent ones isn't going to be looking at that normal level of substance use. What I'm going to be focusing on is where someone gets into difficulty with their drug and alcohol use, and the way that obviously has an impact upon the people around them. Now, there are so many different substances. I mean, I've been working in the substance use field for many years now, and I find it difficult to keep up with them all. So what we thought would be helpful for you is if we come on and just think about simplifying all those substances that are out there and explaining the general effects that they have so that you can see why people take them. And with that in mind, what we can see is, broadly speaking, there are 3 types of drug which have 3 different effects. And I hope that this simplified model maybe can help you make some sense of the substance use that's perhaps impacting upon your life. So let's come to the next slide. Okay, so what we have here is a table that offers us this idea that there are 3 broad types or 3 groups of drugs. And I'm going to go through each one now and explain a bit more about each one. The first broad group of drugs are called stimulants. And they get their name because they stimulate neural activity in the body. They're sometimes also called uppers because they lift somebody's mood up. Now, the reasons why people would take a stimulant are things such as I want to feel energized or I want to feel more confident. So back to this idea that people take things in order to change the way they feel, think and behave. So the kind of experiences which they may have are boosted confidence, improved alertness, delayed sleep, relief from boredom, exhilaration, and to feel more energized. Examples include caffeine, energy drinks, tobacco, amphetamines, and cocaine. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not saying for one moment that a cup of coffee is the same as cocaine, because they're not. But just note that they are acting on the body in a similar way, even if the effects are very different. What we can also see is that a substance like ecstasy can be stimulating in lower amounts. The second group of drugs are those called depressants. A slightly confusing term. People don't take them because they want to feel depressed. They get their name because they slow down or block neural activity in the body. So they're sometimes called downers because they calm somebody's mood down. So the motivations to use could include, I want to feel soothed, I want to feel less inhibited. The kinds of experiences people may seek are things like reduced anxiety, their inhibitions are lowered, such as with alcohol. They may feel more relaxed and perhaps a sense of euphoria as well. Examples of drugs that work in this way on the body include alcohol, heroin, fentanyl, and minor tranquilizers like Valium. Cannabis can also be seen as a depressant in lower amounts. Now, the third group of drugs are called hallucinogens, and they work by interfering with neural activity. So the reason someone might take them is they want to escape reality, or they want to enhance their sensory experience. The sorts of things that people may find is that their sensory perceptions are changed, they may feel more relaxed, have a sense of euphoria, and actually have hallucinations as well, which are often known as a trip. Examples of drugs that come into this group are magic mushrooms, LSD, and cannabis and ecstasy in higher amounts. Okay, I hope that helps you make sense of all the different drugs that are out there. Broadly speaking, there's three groups. Now, in addition to those effects that I described from the table, there are other things that happen whether people like it or not. The first one is that there can be side effects through using something. An example of this would be when someone gets drunk, they get the effect of feeling drunk, but they may also be physically sick, and of course they're not able to drive in the same way as when they're sober. So you get side effects as well as the main effect that you're looking for. Now, people often also go into withdrawal after they've used something. And what this means is that the body reacts badly to the absence of a substance in the body. So an example of this would be someone who uses heroin going into cold turkey, as it's called, where their body is craving using the substance again. Now, another thing which happens over time is that if someone uses regularly, then their body gets used to having that substance in it, and therefore they need to have even more of it to get the effect that they're looking for. And this is called their tolerance. Their tolerance goes up, and this obviously has a big effect in terms of how much money they may end up needing to spend in order to keep getting the effect that they want to have from a substance. And also over the longer term, there is the risk of addiction if someone keeps using something regularly. And this is something that we will return to in session number 4. Okay, I'd also just like to say a little bit about cannabis. There's talk out there as to whether young people smoking cannabis will lead to them then using other drugs. This is possible, but it doesn't happen for all young people. And alcohol and cigarettes can also be a gateway to other drugs as well. I think perhaps what's more important is that until someone gets into their early 20s, there is a significant risk of mental health difficulties for some, not all young people that smoke cannabis. Okay, what I'd like to do with you next is to show you what drugs look like and to show you all the things which people use in order to take them. Now, this last part of the session comes with a little health warning. If you're someone who's got into difficulty with your own drug and alcohol use in the past, then you might choose not to watch this part of the session, in that perhaps seeing these things again might be a trigger back to your substance use, and I'll leave you to decide that. Okay, the intention we have in showing this to you is obviously not to show you how to use drugs. The intention that we have is to perhaps give you a window into a world which is not familiar to you, that may well be confusing and frightening. And through doing that, to perhaps demystify drugs a bit more, and to also give you some useful clues in terms of how might you tell if someone's been using. There'll be things to look for, and there will be signs in terms of someone's appearance and behaviour as well. And I'll talk through those as we look at all the various things that are associated with drug use. What we have here are some potential signs of drug use. None of them are actually proof that someone has actually used something. Rather, perhaps a way to look at all of them is that they're possible signs that indicate someone may have used. And if you're concerned about that, then maybe the way to look at these is that they're the start of a conversation, asking someone about it and what it is that they're using it for. You may want to watch session number 7, where I talk about how to communicate with someone about their substance use. Now, some of these signs are maybe quite obvious, such as these little packets that contain substances. But then some may be slightly more subtle, such as these little wraps that contain drugs, or a little wrap of shiny paper. I guess those signs of possible substance use are likely to be kept secret. So maybe some of the others that don't look so obvious may be the ones that you're likely to find. And just to give you some examples of what I'm talking about, things like the way a water bottle has been turned into a pipe. Even more subtle, this Coke can here has been crushed in the middle and little holes punctured in it to turn it into a pipe. Again, without picking it up and looking at it and seeing the little holes and the burn marks, it would be easy to miss that that was a pipe. Some other possible signs of substance use include this little pipe here, and actually this little vodka bottle, that's actually been turned into a pipe with holes punched in the bottom and wire wool put in the neck. And then what you may also notice are some of the many things that people use in order to be able to take drugs. For example, this spoon that's been bent and is burnt on the bottom, that's been used for heating drugs. Also things like a straw, this tile, a hard shiny surface for preparing drugs. Odd things which you may not have seen, like this and this, these are associated with substance use as well. So what we can see is some things are easy to see and some things are easy to miss. A further example of how some signs can be very subtle. Notice how a little bit of filter has been cut off at the end of this cigarette and that all the tobacco has been taken out of it. It's just empty paper. Or this filter with a little strip of paper on it, or bits of filter paper that are left lying around. These are all potential signs of substance use that can be very subtle and easy to miss. Further signs to look for are someone's appearance and behaviour that again may indicate that someone's been using substances. For example, their eyes can often have some clues. If they're bloodshot, that may indicate cannabis use. If their pupils are very enlarged, that may indicate cocaine or crack use. And if their pupils are tiny, it may indicate heroin use. Likewise, if their behaviour seems uncoordinated or drunken, that might be a sign of substance use as well. and maybe changes in mood and temperament at different times of the day. Although it's important, obviously, with teenagers to remember that their changes in mood and behaviour can have nothing to do with drug use at all. So as I said earlier, maybe a way to think about all of these is they're not proof of drug use. Rather, they're signs, they're indicators that maybe somebody is using. And perhaps that's the start of a conversation with them, where you can bring certain things to their attention and with an open mind. Okay, I hope that gives you a bit more confidence to know whether perhaps someone has used a particular drug. I'd like to end this session by offering you some concluding thoughts to think about. The first one is perhaps it would be a good idea to learn more about a particular substance before deciding to talk to someone who you imagine may be using it. And with that in mind, I'd like to offer you some further sources of information. Okay, here are the contact details for Frank, an organisation that can offer you further information on particular substances and how they're used. As you can see, they've got a website, or you can give them a call and speak to one of their helpline workers. My second concluding thought is that you might want to think through the concerns that you have, what you would want to say to someone about them, and whether now's the right time to do so. Therefore, you may want to watch further sessions first, and in particular session number 7, when I'll be looking at how to talk to someone about the concerns that you have. Okay, and my concluding thought is to encourage you to think about the support that you might need at the moment and see elsewhere on the Adfam website for sources of support in your area. Okay, that's it. I'll see you again in session number 3.